Nation, before we get to today's album review, we have to pay tribute to somebody who has passed before us. And unfortunately, Ray Manzarek from The Doors, the keyboard player, considered to be the musical driving force of The Doors, passed away a couple of days ago from bile duct cancer. He was in his 70s, and throughout The Doors' limited discography, of course, most people credited Jim Morrison as being the face of the band. And while that is true, considering it was his lyrics and also his antics that perhaps brought the Doors to the fame that they were able to accomplish, Ray was able to really accomplish all of those things through his music, through the keyboards and the different things he was able to accomplish to really create the mood, to really create the atmosphere that a lot of Doors songs and consequently the Doors records really were able to bring to the fold, uniquely and boldly, musically telling us about the turbulent decades of the 60s and 70s. For now, let's offer a moment of silence for the passing of Ray. Nation, it's time for us to review a band we've talked about before. However, this is a band that has gotten a lot of things that have changed a little bit with them throughout their career. These guys are legends. These guys have a lot to offer, and with their 10th album, they are bringing some new tools, some new tricks to the trade. There are some new tricks up their sleeve. We're talking, of course, about Dark Tranquillity. We're talking about Construct by Dark Tranquillity, which is due out very shortly. We're close. We're almost there. But let's talk about this album. 10 albums in. It really doesn't feel like 10 albums with Dark Tranquillity. However, these guys have been around for really a little bit more than 2 decades, and they are considered to be one of the founding fathers, one of the real conceivers of the melodic death metal subgenre of metal. And it was, of course, originally touted as the Gothenburg sound, the Gothenburg Metal sound, and along with bands such as In Flames and Soilwork and others at the gates, and you could go on and on and on with the history, have really brought this idea of melodic death metal to really, it's something that's heavy metal canon, something that is on the tongues of heavy metal fans to this day. This is a subgenre that has really made it and has sustained itself, now for 2 decades, and of course has received prominence in the 2000s. With Construct, though, I see Dark Tranquillity, and you can hear Dark Tranquillity really engaging in some different things that they've done in the past. In the past, some of their albums could be really perceived by some people as very, similar in nature. It's almost as though they had found a formula, they stuck to the formula, and they only made minor enhancements to said formula in order to make each individual album seem a little bit unique. And the funny thing is that whereas with other bands this is extremely noticeable and it tends to denigrate the quality of the sound, with Dark Tranquillity they've actually really experienced a bit of a resurgence with their last couple of albums, with albums such as We Are the Void, and with albums, that have preceded it directly. And with Construct, we're seeing them take that same similar concept, only add some things to it, and as a result, it's creating a brand new auditory experience, and a lot of people are really taking notice of this, and there's a lot of things that we can talk about regarding this album that seem a little bit different. For one, there's a very straightforward structure to a lot of their works in the past. This is still straightforward to the most part, but however, there are some additional twists and turns. There's a little bit more in the way of songwriting here that has gone kind of above and beyond the norm, and it is a very nice twist. And there's a couple of bands that I can actually semi-pinpoint to this. A couple bands that, whenever I heard this album, a couple of times I had to think to myself, well, hey, this sounds a lot like these guys, as opposed to some of the members, the more prominent members of the, the melodic death metal, the Gothenburg scene, or past Dark Tranquillity albums. And the names that I really got, and this was somewhat with the music at first, and even with the vocals mixed in a little bit, and those 2 names are Paradise Lost and Catatonia. There definitely is a very deep, dark moodiness to this album, especially the first half of it. The first half of it has a lot of moody elements to it, and you have a tremendous songwriting beneficiary here in the fact that they have kind of expanded upon a little bit more dissonance. They've kind of really crafted a mood-elevated musical idea that has kind of, you know, purged itself and kind of plunged itself into some depths a little bit here. And it's just, it's a very hard element to really speak of. It's hard to put into words. However, whenever you listen to this, sometimes you just get those twinges and urges. You think of bands, you think of things that you just listened to, or things that you've listened to for a long fucking time. And for me, whenever I did that, I heard a lot of Paradise Lost and a little bit of Catatonia. The moodiness is really where the Catatonia comes in, and it's not as moody as a Catatonia record, but the more that it pushed in that direction, the more that it kind of veered off to that direction, to that style, is where I really started to feel a little bit of Catatonia. But the third band is a little bit more on the vocal department and in the harsh vocal department, because there's both harsh and clean vocals on here. We're going to talk about that here in just a minute. But with the harsh vocals, I actually got a little bit of a twinge of Rotting Christ in there, and just the attonation, the style, the way in which things are done. And, of course, this is very strange, considering these bands hail from two completely different sides of Europe. We have Rotting Christ from Greece and Dark Tranquillity from up in Scandinavia. So how in the world is this able to really seem all of that similar in attonation and style and things like that? That just doesn't make any sense at all. But actually it does. The way in which I felt about this was that if, for example, the Rotting Christ singer were brought in to sing on this record, it would have had the exact same, you know, punch, that exact same element, that exact same feeling that it did with the Dark Tranquillity's singer. So there you have it. Right there, you have a bit of a similarity there. I really like the growling on this, you know, a lot. It really gave me that real idea that not only had Rotting Christ really passed over more into the melodic death metal ranks, which is something that they have done now for the past half to full decade, but it also showed to me that Dark Tranquillity really had stepped outside the box and really had stepped up their game a little bit and had really improved their songwriting even further. They have expanded and experimented, and with those, and whenever those two words come into play, usually a lot of people get a little bit tense. But whenever those experiments, those expansions end up being very, very welcome enhancements, that's whenever the tension is relieved, and that's whenever albums tend to transcend typicality and become immortal. Now, this is an album that I feel has plenty to offer, and the clean vocals on this album, which is not something that's all of that different than what Dark Tranquillity has done before. However, it seems as though they're a little bit more prevalent on this album. They have a little bit more of a meaning, a little bit more of an importance, and it's almost like enhancing that mood element that I mentioned whenever I mentioned Paradise Lost and Catatonia. It's like enhancing the overall body, the substance of the songwriting construct, and it's a very, very nice add-on. I know I just dropped the name of the album right there in the middle of my sentence, whatever. But it is a really nice element. It actually builds the flavor of the song. It actually assists with the flow. And really, it is seldom, if ever, distracting. So with that said, let's move on to the final say on this album. I would give it an 8.5 out of 10, perhaps a little bit more. This is going to be one where repeated listens throughout the course of the year are going to determine where its spot is going to be on the top 25 list, if it in fact makes it. However, at this point in time, Dark Tranquillity seems like they have just been on the roll of a lifetime ever since, you know, We Are the Void and beyond and before. It just seems like they've really been able to hone into some really interesting experiments and, you know, really have taken a lot of time to make sure that whatever that they put their minds to, whatever musical idea that they kind of set their course with, that they really craft it and hone it before they just put it out. It's something where they do take the time, and so because of that, there's a little bit more of a span of time between releases, but it's all very worth it. And so this is an album that flows exquisitely. It's one that has a great deal of variety on it, so you're never really bored in listening to it. And this is 42 minutes that really fly by. These are 42 minutes that you almost just forget about, in the fact that you don't realize that it was 42 minutes. You feel like you've only listened to maybe half of the record, maybe only about 20 minutes, and you're waiting for the next song. It's not coming, mainly because the record is over, and you look up at the clock, or you look down at the clock, wherever your clock is, and you realize that, well, almost 45 minutes to an hour have passed. It's really that good. It's definitely an album to keep an eye on. It's definitely an album for you to sample. It's definitely an album that I think you guys should pick up and judge for yourselves on, but I think that you guys are going to really, really enjoy it. And because of that, I want to let you guys know. I want to invite your own review, your own feelings on this record in the comments box. whether it be numeric or whether it be just with your description of it. And I look forward to reading a couple of those because that's going to be really, really cool. And so I recommend this record, and I will talk to you guys next time. Peace in metal.